This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
I see my value, and this is what it costs. And having the courage to say, no, this is what we do, and it is worth X amount of money. We've been taught that if you mix commerce into art, it somehow cheapens it, and it's simply not true. That's a way of keeping art down.
What the heck happened to summer? I don't know what happened, but like, I know it was here, and it was chaos, and then it got quiet, and my kids aren't here, and they're at school, and you know, like maybe this is everybody, or maybe this is, I mean, my guest today is not juggling, right? And when you're an entrepreneur and you got 16 balls in the air, you blink, and you're like, oh shit.
Summer happens to other people. Yeah. It's a fictionalized construct at this point in my life. You know, I surfed twice, you know, and I managed, and each time I did, and I used to surf for 3 hours a day in San Diego, you know, and those are the great days before I had ambition, you know, and before I really started taking my life seriously. It was fantastic. And I feel like that was, you know, kind of like training my elephant out in the water, but I would do it for so long at a stretch. And now if I make it out there for 9 waves or like 5 waves for 45 minutes, I'm like, it's the greatest day. This is my entire summer, right? 45 minutes.
Is surfing like your ultimate happy place still?
Ultimate happy place. Always has been. It's it's meditation, man. I mean, it's meditation. You're bobbing in water. The negative ions are going. The sun is out. You're getting the vitamin D. You're nowhere near a piece of technology. You know, you are staring at the horizon. You have nothing on your mind. You're constantly watching. And then when you're on the wave, you're in that state of flow. It's the most primal thing that I can get in touch with in a city.
Troy, you are on the short list of truly talented, creative people that I know in Southern California, not just San Diego. And I think you deserve a lot more love than you get. That's not really your style, but I love the way you write. And as a writer, that's hard. You know, like it's hard when you see someone else's stuff. You're like, that's so good.
Or that's Chat GPT.
That's easier to spot. That's easier to spot, in my opinion. Your stuff is never Chat GPT. Another great T-shirt.
No, painfully no. Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, if you stare at an empty page, I think that's the other state of flow that I talk about. And I'm not really a flow guy. I've never really mentioned this until now. It's just kind of coming up, and I feel like I'm in some kind of Nike commercial. But it's true though, that state of flow, there's only a few places you find it. I find it when I'm reading, I find it when I'm surfing, I find it when I'm playing with my kid, and I find it when I'm writing, you know, like, and genuinely trying to yank that next word out, you know. And if you do it completely solo and stare at that page, it's the most terrifying cliff that you could ever stare at. But when you finally make the jump and you know, all of a sudden you grow those, you know, like wings that they have on Red Bull commercials and videos, and you're flying. I mean, it's one of the most locked in moments you can find. I freaking love it, man.
This episode of the Courageous Podcast is brought to you by Nike and Red Bull. Clearly, here we are. I didn't know that San Diego Magazine had partnerships with both of those brands.
You know, the funny thing is, I'm giving them love, and I don't have a partnership with them. This is how great of a businessman I am.
No, baby steps. Baby steps. So we're going to obviously talk about San Diego Magazine. I'd like to talk about some of your work up in LA as well. But what happens when you're in flow in the water and you're like 200 yards from a pen and you're like, shit, do not forget this idea. How often does that happen where you'll have something in the water? And do you go to panic that I'm going to forget this? Or do you just like, I'm a vault, I got it. That's an awesome fucking idea. Keep going forward.
Oh, I have a goldfish memory, brother. It goes in and goes out. You know what I have faith in, though? I have faith in the unseen and the untappable in us, like, meaning there's like this murky burble in the bottom of us, right? Where that idea falls and just kind of like it'll reduce, it'll simmer, it'll come back up if I put my face to a page. If I get it, open up a document, and I'm like, what was that thing that I was thinking about? It'll come up,
You're a better man than me. I go into immediate fear mode. If it's like 2 a.m. or like, obviously, the only surfing I'm doing is the surf and turfing. Like, that's my surfing. I'm a land shark.
That's a good option.
And that's where I'm strongest is eating.
Yeah, same.
But I now email myself all the time. Like, I fear the goldfish thing for real. And I'm like, I think this is a good idea. I actually like sending it into the vault because then I'll go back to it. I was like, what was I thinking? Or, okay, yeah, this is cool. This is going into the writing vault. Like, let's figure out how to percolate.
One of the best things that I found for just creative ideas, and anybody's in the creative space of writing, is I have a notes document on my computer that is now, I believe, 40,000 pages. I don't know how many. I don't know how deep it is. I haven't gone to the bottom of it. I copy every idea, every line that I read, especially reading. If I'm reading something good, I'm reading Dave Foster Wallace, Joan Didion, or whatever is going to inspire me. I'll read a line and I'll write it down, and I'll make myself actually write it so that I feel like I kind of created that line, and I kind of wear their skin for a second, their creative skin. And now whenever I start writing or whenever I need an idea or a spark, I go to that docs and start reading great lines. And I'm like, okay, ready to write.
So for those of you who don't totally follow Troy Johnson, and you should, Troy and I met in both of our last lives.
Yeah.
I won't say first lives, because I think you've had like the rock skipped across the pond a few times now, which is cool.
Yeah, it was paleontology days. Yeah.
But like for you, I mean, you did a little bit of Hollywood, right? You've acted, you've done a bit of TV personality. Maybe that's the better way to say it.
Yeah.
I think it feels like your love is in creative writing. You're an author. And then I'm curious, the next word I'm about to use, like, do you step back and now go, oh shit, you're now an entrepreneur? Like, you are an entrepreneur.
It is crazy. Being an entrepreneur, you have been an entrepreneur since I've known you, and it was a part of a life. I mean, I guess there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in being a freelance creative, right? You are your own business, but you don't have employees. You don't have a massive business structure. You don't have an EBITDA. Your EBITDA is on a napkin. Your EBITDA is, looking at your bank account and going, please don't have a bad number in there, but when we took over San Diego Magazine, it was the biggest business, experience. It was the deepest, most radical, most terrifying business experience I've ever had in my career. And we took over San Diego Mag when, oh God, so I don't know how much backstory you want here, and I don't want to bore you with everything, but I'll kind of give you this scenario. Pandemic hits. I'm on national TV. I've got, San Diego Magazine is a little bit of a side gig, not a side gig. I've been telling the stories of the food scene here for 16 years, right? And, when I woke up, TV was shut down. There was nothing to do. So I started doing humor online, and it was weirdly connected, and CNN picked it up, and Funny or Die picked it up, and and that kind of like helped raise a profile. And so what I did with that profile online is I woke up one morning, and for the people that I've been telling the stories up in San Diego for 16 years, all sent me an email and said the same thing: help. And I didn't know what to do. I said I was going to open up my Instagram and go live with all these people. And my wife's like, you're crazy. Somebody's going to get on there naked. You're going to have a moment that's cancelable. And I'm like, I'm not a cancelable person. I think I have a trust in myself. So we did this, and it really became a thing. Like PBS did a story on it, and and it was, and I'm in no way asking for a sainthood here. There's so many people that did way more than I did during the pandemic, but we basically just put these young mom and pops on the Instagram live, showed what they were cooking, talked about their story, what they were going through. We laughed, we cried, and everything else. And it just created a community, and it gave me more meaning in my career than I've ever had. And I had to sit back at one point, maybe go surfing, and realize why do I feel so good? Why do I feel so great about what I'm doing right now? And I think it's because I was investing in my community. This is the same reason why I never left San Diego. It was because everybody in my TV career, when I got on Food Network 13 years ago now, said, if you want to be a writer, you want to be on TV, you got to go to LA, you got to go to New York. My agent's like, you're so dumb. You are the idiot of my entire roster. Now, if you were in LA right now, you could be getting an audition every single day. I'll have you a show on Netflix. I'll have a show you on Hulu, or, whatever. I'm like, I'm not leaving San Diego, because if everybody who had an idea or any ounce of creative ambition in San Diego left to go to LA or New York, San Diego would be the souvenir cup of California. It would be just culturally dead zone, right? Like algae would bloom and no fish would live. I mean, it would. That's what would happen. So at the end, the long story short, Claire, my wife, was like, "Look, let's take over San Diego Magazine." She had a job. She helped launch Peacock on NBC. She helped put the Olympics online for the first time on Comcast, NBC Universal. She said, "I'm from the tech side and the business side. We marry that with your storytelling, your anchors here. We can probably make something cool for the city and kind of connect with that joy you're feeling in your life right now of telling the stories in your own community." There it is. Woo!
I love it. Good job. Well done. By the way, look, we do go way back, and this is the Courageous Podcast. And I can remember, by the way, I always love going to lunch or dinner with you, because it's like, well, I didn't need to bring my wallet today. That was awesome. Right. I'll be honest about it. It's like, nope, there's a lot of food here.
Overeating is a perk of the profession, for sure.
So let's give a shout out to Claire. Claire's maiden name was it? Why am I blowing it?
We're Smith and Johnson, so we were like a bad luck.
Smith and Johnson. That's the fallback. So I remember when she was moving here, because I was, in New York for a long time before I came here. And somehow you, I think, connected me to her, and it was like, tell her it's going to be okay.
Like, basically, yes.
Someone else needs to talk to her other than me. You've done it. And
Brian, you're very good at talking. You're very good at persuasive enterprises. Please help me get a wife.
Delegate Lee, maybe just, hey, move 3,000 miles away. But the facts are, and I'll talk about myself as well. My identity still to this day. I love San Diego. There's a gestation period though that needed to happen where I'm like, I'm not a San Diegan.
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker who has made a decision to live in San Diego. And I think deep down, like really deep down in the abyss, the percentages are still like 70-30 that I don't know if it's like a relevance ego thing that I love where we live, but I still enjoy doing really meaningful work outside the market. And I can remember, we're going to bounce around a little bit here, going to lunch with you. We'll call it Light Before Claire.
Yeah.
LBC.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt like you were unhappy.
Yeah.
And
that's the majority of my freelance and just, unhappiness is one of the main drivers, that I've found in my creativity, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I could pretend like I'm a happy person, and this is not like a mental health podcast, but I mean, that kind of agitation, that kind of unease, that kind of restlessness, has always driven me, and I didn't have that, that purpose, that one thing. I had a job here on Food Network. I had a job at the Big Ten Network. I had, some gigs other places, San Diego Magazine. I was writing about food, but it was just, I don't know, it just didn't feel like I had a purpose. And I guess, Claire and San Diego Magazine gave me a purpose,
Well, I feel like you're happier now than you were before. Like, to your point, like,
for sure.
More.
Absolutely.
I'm not here. We're here to make Troy Johnson cry today on the Courageous Podcast. What a great host I am. No, look, I wonder if we feel similar. I now love San Diego. I'm proud to live here. I'm proud of how far our city has come since I've been here. I'm not pretending that I had anything to do with it. I think a lot of smart people were like, I always thought logic would win out. And people would well, who wouldn't want to live here? And you're seeing that happen, and you're seeing it's almost like chutes and ladders from Amazon sliding down to San Diego with a lot of cash. That's a whole another
You absolutely have been a part of it. And this is why, I mean, you coming from New York and having been in the creative scene, you know, and working with brands to help express it in the most connected, like real way. Like advertising has that bad stigma, or branding has that bad stigma, or marketing has a bad stigma, but you can do it in a way that's actually real, just telling the stories of what's going on within the culture of any organization. And you did that way that didn't feel gross. It felt inspired. It felt beautiful. And you need that. Business needs good creativity. And that's what you brought, you know, and I was on the, you know, just food writing TV side. And now I'm in branding and business as well, you know, but it was all of us together, I think, helping. And we're just two tiny cogs, you know, in that machine, you know, but we need those tiny cogs, you know. I mean, I'm a tiny cog in the machine that, you know, of people that decided to stay and try to make San Diego a better place, try to make it a little bit more, and not make it more New York, but make it the culture and the creativity and the business and the sophistication closer to that level. So you're not like sitting in San Diego going, God, I wish I was in New York because I could actually get some culture.
Yeah, I do think I struggled with that for a while. I don't struggle with that as much anymore.
No.
Like I wonder, and you know, what I love about this, Troy, we're just having a chat, right? So like, this isn't like I sent you 20 questions and we're going to go over these. Like,
no,
I think that this is a love story happening. The more I do the things that I love, I think that's my version of flow state.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost forget. Like when I watch you do what you do and I watch your videos or I watch your content, I'm not thinking, boy, that Troy Johnson's so good for San Diego. Like that is the last thing I'm thinking about.
Thank you. That's the best compliment you can
get. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's just like, I love Troy's stuff, you know, and you can feel it. Like, is there because I want to talk about the entrepreneur side, but in the spirit of the creative side.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still needed in the work. Like you're still needed in the content. Like you're still needed in the design. In you can feel the play. Is there a we'll call it a segment, for lack of a better word? Is there a segment that you might as well be surfing? Like when you go to visit a new restaurant and they're cooking in front of you and you're tasting there, is there one segment that just is instant flow state for you that you do right now?
In terms of being in the scene, my favorite, I was in Layla last night. Layla is this new restaurant opened up by the biggest restaurant group in San Diego, CH Projects, and they took over the Lafayette Hotel, and Esquire named it the best hotel in North America, and they just opened up this Middle Eastern restaurant. It's a concept. The owner of the restaurant group is Iranian, and wanted to steer far away. I promise this is going towards your point. Wanted to steer away from his Iranian roots because he came to the United States when he was really young, and it was a proud thing for him to be Iranian or Middle Eastern. And then 9/11 happened, and he would just tried to assimilate and be as stereotypically American as humanly possible, right? And then, his mom passed, and, his mom's Iranian, and, he really kind of gravitated towards getting into his roots. And, and this is what this restaurant was a manifestation of. And he was sitting in there to talk to me about it. There's my flow state. My flow state is sitting here right now, having this conversation and just listening to you and feeding off of it, listening to him and observing the way he talks, the way it's like every scene that I put myself in is a movie, and I'm kind of trying to. I'm cultural. I don't know. The New Yorker has great cultural criticism, and any good poet will have great cultural criticism. They'll notice the tiny little details that matter in the room, and that's my flow state. I'm sitting in there, watching it, listen to him, and watching the individual teapots that he got in a Saudi Arabian night market, over there. I'm like, every single one of them is unique, and I'm like, those are the kind of like details that I'm picking up on. The way that the woman in San Diego is struggling a tiny bit to explain the cultural significance of tea at every single meal, which is tea is everything in the Middle East, and so I'm picking up on all this, and that's when my brain is just going out with like a hydra, and you're just, you kind of lose yourself. That's what I love.
But in that moment, there's not Troy Johnson, the entrepreneur, anymore, right? You're part detective. Actually, let's say this is, I'm holding my coffee, but let's say this for a second was the Troy Johnson cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had to deconstruct all of the components. What percent is detective? What percent is journalist? What percent is TV personality? Give me the breakdown. And this is only like last night sitting in that chair doing what you do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're just taking in data points, right? You're taking in like notes of creativity in poetry, which I got a damn degree in. It's the least employable college graduate in 700 years. What you do is you take tiny details and you extrapolate them, right? What does that mean? What is the larger significance of that? So, I mean, that I do the first part is detective. You're like, what are the individual parts of this? What is the whole? What does that say about who's holding it? And what does that say about where we are politically, socially, whatever it is, whatever is going on in the world at that moment. So taking the world that you're kind of reading about every day, being suffused with on social media and everything else, and then going into one scene and saying, how do the individual parts of this extrapolate out? And really, extrapolation is the majority of it. Like I can go, and not I can, in terms of the rare skill, but I mean, the way I've been able to make my career is that I will go into somebody will give me a detail, and I'll be able to write a story, a full story about that detail, and people are like, what, how, where did your brain even go? How did it get there? And I'm like, because I studied poetry, you had to take one detail and make an entire entire narrative out of that. So that's the extrapolation is where is the majority of what I can bring.
It's very Seinfeld, Larry David on one thing,
right.
But then I don't know why it makes so much sense that you study poetry. I mean, like that's what it feels like. It really does. It's a compliment. It is like, how often does when you're in it? And by the way, I don't recall in any of our lunches or like a dinner, I don't remember you ever taking notes. I don't remember you ever like pulling out your phone. So
I'm not a great journalist in that traditional sense. I mean, there's very much there's a operations to journalism. Like you need to do this and do that, and I'll sit in a room and I'll take some notes, but I'll just take top notes, right? And I'm getting a vibe, and I'm getting like those general thoughts, and then I'll make sure with the person that I'm actually quoting, I'll send it to him and be like, "Is this a correct quote? You just tell me, did I get this right?"
All right, let's play the time machine game real quick.
Yeah.
All right, let's say we zipped into a time machine. It's 30 years from now. You're alive still, by the way. I think congratulations.
Okay,
I think we're
Thank
both
you.
still. And you look back at all this, whatever this might be, and you're happy, by the way. So congrats. Okay. You're happy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what does it look like? Where are you? What are you proud of?
I mean, being proud, the thing that would bring me the most joy is the same thing that brings me the most joy into doing this at San Diego Mag, is, the effect that it has on people. And there's a couple different effects. So I sat with Drew Deckman. He's a Michelin star chef in Baja, just opened up his first place in North Park as well. North Park is having a moment, by the way, and I sat with him in his office and the night before his opening and everything was going wrong. And, it was a episode of The Bear. And we talked, and he got his philosophy degree. He is unemployable like myself. And he was talking about the philosophy of being a chef and how it was, in the early days, he thought he was the best thing since, a beer in a can, and then he had to dissolve that ego in order to become a real chef and, realize that he was, full of shit, and he was part of a team that nothing works without that team. Anyways, the next day I write a story and I just blurted it out on the page and just wrote about that. And I put it out in the world. And, he called me and he was like, I was just about ready to give my opening night speech to my staff. And this is the biggest, it took months. Everything went wrong. It took months. People were kind of traumatized by this opening. What he said, and I'm supposed to be strong. I'm supposed to be, and I read your piece right before it. He goes, and I start crying. And I started, you nailed like the angst and the success and and everything. It was just a good picture. He goes, I've never had a story about my life feel so real, and that to me, if I can capture people or help them express themselves, and really take them for who they are without falsifying it, without making it, and without being in writing, sometimes you can take liberties that don't paint people. It paint people in an unfair light and unfairly good. I want it real as humanly possible. And that's what he said. It's like, you weren't totally, giving me all the kudos in the world, but you nailed it, and And then he saw the stats on the video that we did. That's the other part of it. And this is the real world part of being in business. I sent him the stats, and, our numbers, like his video should have driven him 1,140 people, into his restaurants. And if you times that by an average check, that's $100,000 of revenue that our storytelling just gave to this. Not an upstart chef, but he's trying to make his dream work in San Diego. And I hear that all the time. It's, a barbecue restaurant that did something on our burger joint in Mission Beach, Rosemary's Burger, great place. You should got to check it out. He called me after I did the video on him, and, he said, the video went viral, just hundreds of thousands of views, and, I had 20,000 shares or something like that. And it was, he'd gotten named one of the best restaurants in America on a Yelp list, and he called me and he said, dude, my business is tripping after your video. He's like, I'm on the top 100 restaurants on Yelp, and people aren't mentioning Yelp. They're coming in and they're mentioning San Diego Magazine and that video. And I'm like, that to me, that's pride. That's like, I helped a member of our community. That guy deserves a spotlight. He's doing something cool. He's got a good heart, and that matters too for me. Like, here's a negative part of what I do, like, not negative, but, kind of focusing on a negative for a second. What we do in San Diego Magazine is I analyze things on quality, and do I think that you would like them? And we're totally honest. I've never put a word in San Diego Magazine that I don't agree with. If I don't like the restaurant, I just won't cover them. I'm not going to go in there and bash a local restaurateur, but I'm not going to mention it. I'm out. But I analyze things on the quality, and then, is this person a good person? Like, do I believe that they're contributing? And I realize that's kind of a value statement, and I don't make it lightly. Like, I really do my research. And I find that, look, that person is doing, like, treating their staff well, she seems to be like just a good neighbor, like somebody who actually, like, is putting good into people, then I'll cover them all day long. It's as much you eat with your heart and your ethics as well as you do with your mouth, and there are people that I honestly have not covered in San Diego Magazine, even though they are some of the larger people in town, because I've personally experienced, and I've heard from other people, that they're not treating people well. And I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like I need to drive our audience and listeners to somebody who's not treating people well. There's enough other good stories out there.
See, this is why I love this question, because, like, you're in my question. You're 80. You're 81.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And you're talking the videos, and when you're not going to be. I have good news. I think you're not going to be running San Diego Mag. You personally will not be at 81 years old. Video will look very different through some glass. I don't know, or in my brain. Okay. Yeah. So my first takeaway obviously is, and this is why it's an unfair question, is when you're in it, you're so in the damn trenches.
Yeah.
And it has to be just like you would be if you were the chef yourself, with a fire going on right now. So
long tail of that, I guess, to your question is, I think that makes an impact on a city. What we talked about earlier. If I help bring up the good cultural forces in this city, and I can sit back and I look at San Diego from my porch, somewhere in Iowa, because I can't afford to live in San Diego anymore. If I sit back and I go, you know what, like what we did, it's not just me. Again, it's our entire fucking staff. But what we did, I feel like we contributed to that person, that part of town, whatever it is. I can look and be like, wow, we really helped. Tell the stories of a culture in a place that had been, being from San Diego. I mean, you get denigrated. You get like, oh, you got the San Diego Zoo and some, deep fried tacos. Huh? That's great. That's, and we've been cast off as this kind of culturally, confetti, khaki pants to wine shirt, sort of, and nothing wrong with the wine shirts. Like, I like them, like kind of cultural wasteland. And that's been my mission. I don't know why. I don't know. I didn't like being from here. and seeing it. And I saw really creative parts. I saw the Casbah, I saw our artists and musicians and, things like that. I'm like, yeah, we'll never be New York. That is just a petri dish of culture. It is where everybody goes and everybody lands and everything. It's always going to be that. But it doesn't mean that other markets can't be their own culturally relevant force. And I think if I look back in 81 and I'm like, you know what, San Diego's a lot better culture, and not saying that I did it. I'm just saying, at least I was one of the tiny little cogs in that wheel that helped bring it up. That make me happy.
Well, I always look, I'm going back to my last life, but it was always a patiently long game. Like one of my mantras is I'm patiently relentless. Like it could take a decade. It could take some time, but like really smart people, really smart creative people are watching what you do. And it took us 1,000 days to hire one badass rock star. And it is courageous to move here in creativity. Right.
Yeah.
And so now here you are, this detective sleuth meets poet that's looking under rocks. And they're the right rocks to look under. You're like, you've got to go check out this restaurant. The story, right? So let's say, okay, we're back in we're 30 years from now.
Yeah.
And there's a Hawaiian shirt dude with khakis who is, remember Multiplicity? Remember that movie? No. This was a Michael Keaton where he was too busy, so that they cloned him. There's like a number 2, a number 3, a number.
I want to live that movie.
All right, so let's say it's 30 years from now, and Troy Johnson's number 2 is now covering, has to write the story on Troy Johnson.
Right.
Because who else could possibly do this?
Yeah.
With love and attention and nuance and poetry and realness and like freckles, warts, all of it. So again, you pick up the story, which you can still read at 80.
Yeah.
And
maybe.
And what do you hope it says?
I hope it's real. That's, again, I hope that, going back to the story that we told about Deckman, I just hope that it's like, was the guy perfect? Absolutely fucking not. Here's his words, but did he, he find himself at various low points in his life and pull himself up. I mean, and he reinvented himself and at every turn. And did he make people appreciate storytelling in a time when storytelling is being denigrated and AI'd, and, showed the value of, of finding the heart in something, like finding something deeper in, because that I really, as a poetry major, as somebody who loves literature, as somebody who loves storytelling, loves cinema, and loves art, and what I love the most is finding that story, that taking the time to find a story that's not being told. And if they're like, dude, he unveiled this, he showed us this, he showed us parts of the world that weren't being given light, or weren't being thought about in a way that he made us think different. That would be my greatest compliment. Is he took that nugget of that everybody just kind of thought it was an innocuous detail, and he used that to make us think about the world in a different way, or a funny way, or whatever it may be. But the nugget, finding, like what we do with our stories with, is, I'm like, it's not never about food. It's always about the people, right? That food is just a window into culture, religion, history, family dynamics, love, sex, everything. It's a parenting. I start there with that food and say why it's good, and then tell me why that matters, what that says about the person that's making it. And if somebody eventually says, he took something innocuous and made it bigger, that's really, I would be happy. Yeah. Or something that people thought were not.
You're very easy for me to root for. I think you're easy for people to root for, but also for myself, you're easy to root for. And I find myself every once in a while saying things that age me out. I might as well be 80, but I think, like, I'm proud of what you're doing, man. It's so great.
Thank you,
because it's not, I'm sure there's fear.
Oh,
right?
It fuels you. Yeah.
And yet you still are like, oh, I have these rules. I've got these laws, right, on how to cover a story that I won't waver on.
Yeah.
And yet I have to live with the fear of all the other things. And I got to put the entrepreneur hat sometimes to the side. Because if I don't deliver on the poetry, if I don't deliver on the human, if I don't deliver on that, then what else do we have here, right? Then you're not telling a story.
Yeah.
But yet then you got to come back and you have an office and there's people and you got to pay them.
And I got to pay him and I got to go to this meeting and I got to go, there's a lot of people management, and that's one of the biggest things.
EBITDA sounds like something you would weave into a poem. No.
EBITDA sounds like something you would dance to on drugs. Yeah.
EBITDA. And now here you are. It's like not in San Diego. It's some desert. You're Burning Man.
Exactly.
Going over to the EBITDA camp.
You got the EBITDA on you? Yeah.
What I would do for some EBITDA right now. Oh my goodness. And then yet in some ways you have to then go back to the business version of Troy Johnson. So what's the differences between storyteller Troy and then like, oh, wait a minute. What does my business card say? Oh, wait a minute.
Officer. Right. Yeah.
Right. When that Troy walks into the office, are you good at keeping one personality or do you recognize like new hats coming on?
A new hat definitely has to come on to me. Just, and it's so interesting because, being a business owner in California is tough. I mean, there's so many regulations. There's so many things you got to watch out for. There's so many, you have to be respectful. You have to, and obviously I'm a respectful person, so hopefully that comes across. But there's just certain things you can't say. Like normally if I'm talking in person, sex is going to come up, like I'm going to talk about, it's going to be, I don't know, and there's so many, as a creative, nothing is off limits. In fact, your whole job is to not be off limits. Your whole job is to eradicate limits, and then the entrepreneur's job is to, dance that fine line between, this is nothing's off limits in terms of the ideas that we can execute and pull off as a storytelling and branding machine, but there is off limits of how you can talk to people, what you can say, and, I'm not totally inappropriate. You can bring me to parties, but even the tiniest little, like, I high five in the office. I'm a hugger and I have to high five in the office like that. So it definitely changes your personality like anybody does when they go to work. You know what I mean? But with me, what I struggle with, and I'll be totally honest with you, I'm wildly imperfect as a leader, and I try to be better as a leader because what I did for the first couple of years is try to help people understand why what I had done had and I'm not saying that I'm the greatest writer. I'm not saying anything else, but I'd had some success and I think this is why, and so I'd spent 2 years training those people, but I can also be very direct. I feel like sometimes we dance around things, in an office space and you don't have time, especially as an entrepreneur that is, we took a 75-year-old media company from the studs. It needed a full rebuild. We did that the same week. We took it over the same week we had a baby. I had no time for dancing around. So I learned this very direct. I go, okay, I got 4 minutes. What are we going to do? Let's go. And I'm trying to break out of that a little bit as we've grown and, the company is having success. I'm trying to be like, let's relax a little bit. I'm going to be an inspiring leader instead of, I need you to be efficient right now, and so there's a part of me I struggle with. I'm like, how do we be direct and how do we be efficient while still actually enjoying working in a creative enterprise, So
how often has Claire had to pull you into a side office and say, Troy, you cannot say that?
A few times. Although, a few times. The reason
I love that there was something that you wanted to say, and then in your head, Claire actually said, Troy, do not say that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and look, at the end of the day, like it's funny because you don't know if you're going to be a good business leader. You don't know, or a business person or somebody who can, identify, the proper way forward for a larger organization. You have 24 people. I have 24 employees. There's a lot of minds that I have to, take into consideration and what their ideas are for the brand. Luckily, you have that like guiding, our guiding principles are teach people something, give them access to something that they can't get access to, and give it voice. So if you have one of those things, it's a good story. You write a funny thing about the breast implants at the nuclear power station in San Antonio.
Right.
It's just funny. That's great. That's voice. That's one. But if you go inside, and you show people the reactor, okay, now you got 2/3 of an amazing story, and then you teach me something about the actual like stats and science and everything else, but that's a perfect story. So, but the long tail point of that, and you can tell I kind of wind around again. Give me one detail and I go off forever, right? But the point that we're talking about is that I've found I can be direct. I can find that good answer most of the time, and it goes on gut. And there's been so many the Blink articles. I mean, the Blink book by Malcolm Gladwell. That sort of thing. I do on gut. I listen. I'm like, that's the right way, and I just name it, and I'm like, and I can explain to you all you why, and I'll give you 1, 2, 3, but that's it. That's it. Stop talking. Let's go. Because you have to move, and you have to be, it's been pretty effective for me to just name what I think is right and go. Unless somebody's like, no, that's not right. And you have to listen and be like, for this very specific reason, I'd be like, oh, good point. Okay. That's not right. Let's try another one, but you have to, in any kind of creative enterprise, the talking has to stop and the doing has to do.
Since San Diego Magazine has consumed most of you, and obviously family life too, right?
Right.
Although you're in business with the fam, LA calls from time to time still, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in that car ride up, is it like, do you get so much energy? Is there joy from that experience still? Is it like, life is on timeout down here? Yes. Or do you feel like I'm going back to a past life? Like what is the feeling for you?
You get to there's a little bit of a break. We are nonstop, 24/7. In the beginning, it was 20-hour days. And it's still very, as a small business owner, you're just all the time. So you're getting a break. You're getting to detach into this world, and you're also getting to detach. I walk on a set, and there are 7 of the most talented people. I mean, not 7. There's 50. Like some of the best videographers, the best sound guys, the best lighting person, the best director, the best. There's so many creative people in storytelling that you get to be around for a day, day and a half. And the people on air, obviously, usually, unless we're having an off day, are funny and they can tell a story and they can, being around that energy just fuels me, man. I mean, it's, I'm such a nerd compared to the rest of my people on food TV usually. So I am the kind of guy that and people think this is cheating, but I'm like, no, it's actually just prepping for what your job is. I will sit down in my trailer before I go on food TV, which my job is to criticize food on air, live in front of somebody, which is a psychological play in and of itself. You're like, I want to be a nice human being, but my job is to tell you 2 things that are wrong about your food and 2 things that are great, But I sit down and I think of different ways to say it's salty. I think of different ways to say that this plate is a mess. Like this is a FEMA disaster zone. Like that sort of, you're not. It's the burger isn't rich. It's like eating Morgan Freeman's voice. It's so rich. That sort of thing. Like I think of those lines because I know what's going to happen in these kinds of instances. Something's going to be too salty. Something's going to be undercooked. It's undercooked. Like the sequel to Waterworld. I don't know. Whatever. You gotta. You think of those lines ahead of time, and I have a couple in my pocket, and most of the time I'm just improvising. But when it comes down to it, I'm like, that line is perfect for this. So I nerd out and come up with potential things I can say in certain circumstances. It's like when I was a teenager, and I'm like, what am I going to say to a girl? What am I going to like? That's the same thing. This story is the girl that I want to talk to in middle school.
Well, obviously that didn't work out so well because it took you till your 30s or 4. How old were you when you and Claire met? That was
Many
a terrible,
times it did not work. It's terrible.
Terrible strategy. Well, no, I love the when you love story, you break it apart, you deconstruct it, and there's times when there is times I believe there's times when you do need to tell, and there's a lot of times you need to show, and I like the Morgan Freeman's voice is so good. So, hey, we're kind of coming down the home stretch here. This is a tell moment, right? But being the Courageous Podcast, I feel like you should take us home. I'd love to know, one, what is like the most courageous thing you're wrangling with right now? Do what you do, keep it real with us. And then 2, I have a favor.
Mm-hmm.
The favor is just what you wanted to hear, by the way, is me asking you to do more work. But I
Perfect.
I trust you with my brand, which
Mm-hmm.
is I don't know what bigger compliment as a brand guy there would be.
That
I
is
would
a
love
huge compliment.
I would love for you to consider writing the intro that goes with this, because I don't think I would be able to do it justice the way you would do it.
Hell yeah. If I can, especially if I can do stream of consciousness and you're okay with that. Yeah, absolutely.
So look, someone's been hanging out with us for like 45, 50 minutes. Maybe they're in their car. They're probably, they love food. They follow you. They're rooting for you. Or maybe they hate you. Maybe they hate me.
Mhm.
And yet they're like, what is this guy going to say? The old Howard Stern strategy, right?
Yeah.
No, but realistically, if someone's going to be here for this long of the combo, they're invested in this, and they're probably like me. They're inspired by you, and you keep going after it. You keep going for it, even when it's hard, even when there's fear. So, like, what's the right way for you to talk about courage for you, and then what's the takeaway for the listener?
I think, I mean, the biggest courage piece for me has been since the beginning of this is that, believing your worth and being able to name it. I mean, that's in storytelling specifically. I'll give you an example of this. I ran into a business owner, actually a couple of business owners who have said, you know what, I've gotten so much press and I've never paid for a damn thing, and they bragged about it in a way of, and I was like, so explain to me this. Like, how is it good? If I walked into your business and I took something off the shelf or I benefited from it and I'm like, and I've never ever supported that guy. Like that's what you're telling me right now. You're telling me that storytelling and local medias and hiring people that are creative is not worth you supporting with finances or marketing or whatever. And that is one of the biggest things that we struggle with the media. That's why media dies, is that they don't see that people are like, I think I can get it for free. Or I think if somehow I support it, that means that, I paid for play. That's not paid for play. That's you supporting the storytelling machine in, your city, something you believe in, whatever what form that is. And the reason why I tell it background is this is because now we've seen the effects of what we do and how much it helps the community and how much value it brings, and I think storytellers have been trained that there's no value in that. There's no people get it for free. ChatGPT will do it. Like, no, well, I've seen the difference, and we know that there's a difference between what our team is able to create, and I want people to have the confidence that that's valuable, and really taking courage to be like, no, I see my value and this is what it costs. And I know that sounds very mercenarial maybe, but I mean, it's just really all I'm trying to do is create something of value for San Diego. And in doing that, you have to put a monetary value to it. I was very uncomfortable with the mix of finance and storytelling for a long time, and having the courage to say, no, this is what I do. This is what we do. And it is worth X amount of money. And I know it is because I'm seeing all the numbers on the back end. That was my courage of, having that uncomfortable conversation of the mix of art and commerce. It's somehow we've been taught that if you mix commerce into art, it somehow cheapens it or makes it into something less valuable. And that's simply not true. That's a way of keeping art down. You're not going to pay you. You're going to be a starving artist. That's the only kind of artist that has value. You're like, man, that's just the thinking around that is so outdated and antiquated. And, sure, I'd love to just sit around and do heroin in my squat, but,
Or EBITDA. We can do some EBITDA.
I'd like to do EBITDA on my squat, but I mean, like, creatives deserve, payment for their worth. And especially in a day and age of free social media and influencers and everything else. And, and nothing against influencers by any means. They deserve, credit for their work too, and they deserve to be paid. But that's it.
To me, it's a couple words that you slipped in throughout the episode that popped. When you say things like creating value, without quality, there's no real value, right? So like it makes you wonder, like sometimes fear wins. Okay. Sometimes fear wins and we surrender to fear. Okay. But usually, like flip the script. I've never walked into a quality restaurant and they gave something really. It's like it's MP on the menu to me.
Right.
And $90 on the menu to me. And
Yeah.
I don't blink.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation that's been set with that, right? Which is, and cost is a brand metric. There's a brand equity.
Yeah.
If you charge me $6 versus 60, there's a value to one. So to me, it's like, I love your, at the very hallmark level, like know your worth and don't be afraid to like,
that's it.
Put it out in the world.
Yeah. I mean, you've been told to just like, I mean, as storytellers, you just kind of do it for free, but you do it for the love. And it's like, that doesn't mean you don't get compensated, you know, and that's in a mix of art and commerce, that tension has been around for millennia, you know, and I think finally, we're kind of, we're loosening that a little bit. It's like, no, why don't you pay a creative to come do that story? Why don't you, you know, like this is valuable, and storytelling, especially now, and I'll finish this up so it's not a 2-hour long podcast, but you know, we've entered the media, content is free. You know, we've entered the total devaluation of content, you know, because they're like, well, I can just get a couple influencers to come down. And what the good thing is, what we've found over 2 years is we've proven that our content is very drastically different than most throwaway content. You know, there's just, you can tell that the research has been done. They can tell that the art has been applied. You can tell that somebody really thought about the story. The visuals are way better and they make more sense. It's not just an algorithm. It's like, throw that one next to this, you know? And so luckily we're finally getting people to come to us and be like, okay, no, I see the difference and I want the difference and I'm willing to support the creatives there. But I mean, it's a wild time to be like, I'll just chat GPT that, man. And you'll have the word delectable in it. The chat GPT word for food is delectable. You ever see delectable? Who uses delectable? I guarantee that was chat GPT.
All right, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I cannot wait to do EBITDA with you in Iowa in 30 years. I'm coming to your place. I love you. You owe me the write-up. That's on you. And just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for putting this together and building it and talking to people about, you know, what fear, because my courage is kind of the absence of fear. So I get fears in the room, but the courage is the other way.
Amen, bro. Be good.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.